在修仙界，
Hanley's gaze drifted toward what appeared to be empty air and then narrowed. He sensed a faint disturbance that a lower cultivator would have completely missed. A strange smile formed, and without any warning, he released his spiritual pressure. In this world, pressure is more than just power. It is a language. A nascent soul cultivator can turn his own aura into a physical weight, like an invisible mountain, to test or crush an opponent without ever lifting a finger. That is exactly what Hanli was doing. The hidden figure was forced out immediately. Bai Shujun stumbled back several steps, his face filled with alarm as his legs gave way beneath the overwhelming force. He tried to circulate his spiritual power to resist, but his body only trembled and he was left half kneeling, unable to steady himself. Just then a white silhouette appeared before him. A white-robed elder with gray hair and a kind face placed a hand on Bai Shujun's shoulder, and the suffocating pressure instantly vanished, allowing the younger man to stand again. The ease with which he dispelled it revealed his own cultivation. Only someone at the same level or higher could neutralize Hanli's aura so effortlessly. The old man smiled at Hanli and explained that his disciple had only been following orders, and that this was the only way to arrange a meeting. Hanli, in turn, immediately retracted all his pressure and his expression returned to complete calm, as if nothing had happened. His composure itself was a statement. He asked who the old man was and why he sought him out, noting that he had never had any contact with his sect before. The elder chuckled warmly and introduced himself as Lu Wei-ying, an elder of the Heaven Peak sect. He said this was not a suitable place to discuss the real reason and invited Hanli to a secret meeting later that night where everything would be made clear. He then tossed over a green jade slip that he had prepared in advance. Hanli, ever cautious, did not catch it with his hand. He enveloped it in a cloud of azure mist first, a common survival tactic among high-level cultivators, to avoid hidden curses or traps on unknown objects, and sent his spiritual sense inside to find a location marked within. By the time he looked up again, Lu Wei-ying had already saluted and left with his disciple. Hanli frowned and rubbed his chin. The man's mysterious behavior and his assumption that Hanli had been hiding in Soaring Heavens City all along felt strange, leaving the whole matter unclear. For now, he set it aside and returned to his residence with Mu Peeling. Once inside the pavilion, he asked calmly about his senior martial brother Lu, as if the encounter had already been forgotten. He was told that because the war situation had become dire, Senior Lu had gone to discuss countermeasures with the other powers. When Hanli asked where, he learned it was in the official hall at the center of the city. Only nascent soul cultivators affiliated with a superpower were allowed to attend. The true weight of this meeting lay in its location. That towering building in the center of Soaring Heavens City was covered in heavy restrictions and was almost never used, except when the survival of the Nine Nations Union itself was at stake. But now, with the Mulan launching another full-scale assault after a 100-year ceasefire, the upper echelon had no choice but to open it and summon cultivators from other powers, because the overbearing invasion of the Mulan spell warriors was too much for the Nine Nations to handle alone. Intrigued by how they planned to handle the spell warriors, Hanli told Mu Peeling to stay put and departed for the hall. At the entrance, guards sensed his cultivation level, asked his name, and after reporting it, respectfully led him inside. Inside, there were only just over a dozen nascent soul cultivators, far fewer than he had expected. But he quickly understood the logic. Though many nascent souls had gathered in the city, there was no need for everyone to attend. Each major power only needed one representative present. He spotted senior martial brother Lu sitting on the left, who smiled upon seeing him, with the child fire dragon seated closely beside him. The rest were unfamiliar, except for one yellow-robed old man. After a second glance, Hanli couldn't help but sigh inwardly. It was martial ancestor Ling Hu of Yellow Maple Valley. When martial ancestor Ling Hu spotted Hanli, his expression did not change in the slightest. It was impossible to tell whether it was the profound shrewdness of an old monster, hiding his emotions, or if he simply did not recognize the foundation. Establishment disciple from so many years ago. Hanli shifted his gaze to the others in the hall. At the very center sat an old man with a purple face, and a gorgeous woman in palace robes. When Hanli swept his spiritual sense past them, his heart trembled slightly. Both were mid-nascent soul cultivators, which in the hierarchy of this world means they're magical. Power and divine sense are vastly deeper than an early nascent souls. They were clearly the main representatives of the Nine Nations Union. As Han Li was examining the other cultivators, they were also examining him. Most of them were surprised by his youthful appearance as a young man. In the cultivation world, unless one cultivates a specific technique for preserving looks, male cultivators rarely maintain such youth, so his appearance itself signaled something unusual. The Drifting Cloud Sect's elder Lu then called out to him with a smile, inviting him to take a seat and explaining that they were in the middle of a discussion with Sect Master Wu about the Mulan invasion. The child fire dragon beside him also smiled and nodded kindly. Hanlai returned a smile, saluted the other cultivators in the hall politely, and took a seat next to his senior martial brother Lu. The purple-faced cultivator sitting across from him smiled and introduced himself as Wu, Peng of the Enlightened, Leaf Sect. He had just heard from Brother Lu that Han Li had entered the nascent soul stage after only 200 years of cultivation, and praised him as a genius among Heavenly South cultivators, with a promising future on the Great Dao. Even though Han Li's cultivation was still a grade lower than his own, he did not dare to underestimate such potential. Han Li responded modestly, attributing his breakthrough to luck and not daring to speak of any future attainments. Since the Enlightened Leaf Sect stood side by side with the Flowing Mind Sect as one of the pillars of the Nine Nations Union, Han Li kept his tone respectful and polite. As he spoke, his gaze fell on the beautiful middle-aged woman beside the old man. If the purple-faced old man was the Enlightened Leaf Sect master, this woman was likely a high-level cultivator from the Flowing Mind Sect. Wu Peng then sighed and introduced her as Lady Qi of the Flowing Mind Sect, who handled matters for the Nine Nations Union alongside him, before proceeding to introduce the other cultivators in the hall one by one. When he came to martial ancestor Lingu gave only a curt, ordinary response. Hanli's heart trembled faintly at that, but he simply nodded without showing anything. Once introductions were finished, Wu Peng's expression grew tense. He said Han Li had arrived at the right time because they were discussing how the true power of the spell warriors was far beyond their expectations. He had already heard from Elder Yu and others that their side had suffered a great defeat, with 2 important areas about to have their grand formations, broken by huge beasts controlled by the Mulan. There had been many casualties, including a nascent soul cultivator named Huan from the Shadow Form Sect, making him the 3rd nascent soul to perish. Because of the overbearing assault, they urgently needed assistance from all powers. As soon as Wu Peng spoke solemnly, the smiles of all cultivators present disappeared, and a grave atmosphere filled the hall. A green-robed old man with a sharp, thin nose said sullenly that his own sect had also sent disciples according to the pact and had some information, but lacked concrete details about fellow Taoist Feng's defeat. He asked Wu Peng to explain in detail, finding it unfathomable that so many nascent souls had fallen so quickly, and wondered if high-grade spell warriors had already begun to act. Hearing this, Han Li took another look at the old man. From Wu Peng's earlier introduction, he was an elder of the Devil Dao's controlling spirit sect. Wu Peng answered with an odd expression, saying they still didn't know if the enemy's high-grade cultivators were acting in full force. However, it was verified that fellow Taoist Feng and fellow Taoist Xin had perished in one-on-one battles, not from being surrounded. The green-robed old man was alarmed, saying it was impossible. Even if defeated by a mid-nascent soul spell warrior, a nascent soul cultivator should be able to flee for his life. He asked if the Mulan divine sages had begun to act. Wu Peng, as if anticipating the question, readily answered no. The killers were only early nascent soul spell warriors. But they were odd. Not only were their spirit techniques far beyond what other spell warriors of the same grade could do, they also used an incredibly strange treasure. Just as the 2 defeated cultivators manifested their nascent souls to escape, they were trapped by this treasure and rendered unable to use instantaneous movement, leading to their demise. This is a crucial piece of education about this world. The reason nascent soul cultivators are so hard to kill is precisely because once their physical body is destroyed, their nascent soul can instantly teleport away. A treasure that can block that escape fundamentally changes the balance of power. The green-robed old man felt his breath run cold and asked in disbelief, what kind of treasure could stop a nascent soul's escape? Whether it was an ancient treasure or magic treasure, all the cultivators listening had drastically changed expressions, shocked for the same reason. Wu Peng said the observing disciples couldn't see it clearly, but when activated it flashed with red-black light and seemed unblockable. Then he trailed off with a hesitant expression. The green-robed old man, unhappy with the pause, pressed him to speak plainly since matters had already reached such a point. Lady Qi of the Flowing Mind Sect then smiled and spoke on his behalf, explaining it wasn't that he found it hard to say, but that the matter was uncertain. She took over the explanation, which was natural since they were fellow members of the Nine Nations Union. What she revealed was even more disturbing. Disciples who observed the previous battles noted that the two nascent soul spell warriors appeared almost as if they were feeding off the souls of those who died in battle, regardless of whether the souls belonged to spell warriors or cultivators. Because of this, Sect Master Wu had become doubtful whether these unfamiliar spell warriors were actually human, instead being some kind of heretical transformation. Since they didn't emit obvious demonic or ghost energy, the disciples couldn't make a precise judgment, and there was also the matter of the huge, fearsome beasts that had appeared among the spell warriors, which seemed to be connected to these new spell warriors. They suspected the Mulan had begun collaborating with other powers, which would explain how they could invade the heavenly south on such a vast scale. The cultivators in the hall were all stunned by her words. In his alarm, Ancestor Lingu asked solemnly if she meant they were transformed demon beasts. Wu Peng said solemnly that should be the case, and even if they weren't demon beasts, they might be heretical cultivators who cultivated the ghost or demon Dao, which would be far more troublesome than encountering transformed demon beasts. Hanli's expression stirred, and he slowly asked when Sect Master Wu had obtained this information. Wu Peng, surprised, blinked and twirled his long beard with curiosity, saying this came from the report on the last battle and asking why Hanli asked. Hanli held his chin thoughtfully and answered that regardless of whether these unfamiliar spell warriors were men or demons, they had no fear of revealing their identity. Given that they dared to act so boldly at the beginning of the war, it appeared the Mulan would not be attempting a battle of attrition as they did in the past. They would most likely use thunderous strikes, seeking decisive battles with the main forces. He wondered if a great change had occurred in the Mulan plains. Hearing Han Li's analysis, Wu Peng and Lady Qi glanced at each other with astonishment, and the other cultivators also grew sullen, naturally picking up on what he meant. The commentary here lies in the history of war. In the past, Mulan invasions were always battles of attrition, lasting years if short and decades if long. Both sides always avoided direct confrontations of their main forces, because it would only result in a Pyrrhic victory. With most forces annihilated on both sides, neither the Heavenly South nor the Mulan spell warriors wanted such heavy losses, especially since the Mulan consisted of many tribes and the Heavenly South consisted of alliances of various sized sects, and neither side could truly act as one. But now the Mulan were acting with overwhelming force, a vast change from previous invasions. With the addition of huge sage beasts and strange spell warriors, the change was clear to see. A long while later, Wu Peng bitterly smiled and spoke with a grave tone, saying, Han Li's words were reasonable and something was clearly amiss with the Mulan, so they could not be careless. The sects of the Heavenly South must form a second army to help the Nine Nations Union resist them. Otherwise, the Mulan would break through and shatter them. He hoped the fellow Taoists would return quickly and explain this matter to their sects, because the Nine Nations Union would not be able to hold out much longer. After a moment of thought, Lady Qi explained that although Han Li's words were very likely, they were still only a guess. She hoped the fellow Taoists would discuss these matters, only among other nascent soul cultivators to prevent unnecessary chaos among the lower disciples. However, if the Mulan truly wished to have a grand confrontation, their divine sages would be certain to take action. These late nascent Soul stage spell warriors were not something ordinary cultivators could contend against. She said she would inform Elder Wei Wuya about this, to see whether the three great cultivators of the heavenly south could gather together to deal with it. This introduces a key hierarchy in this world. Late nascent soul cultivators, often called great cultivators, stand at the absolute peak, far above even mid-nascent soul cultivators, and only they can face the Mulan divine sages on equal footing. A shriveled old man nodded worriedly, agreeing that Lady Qi made sense and that the matter was urgent, saying he would immediately inform his sect upon returning. The other cultivators also agreed, all understanding the gravity of the situation. Afterwards, the cultivators began to discuss a few particulars and decided to first send some reinforcements to slow down the Mulan advance, buying the various powers the time they needed to prepare. Han Li, Senior Marshal Brother Lu, and the Child Fire Dragon then walked out of the hall side by side. When they arrived outside, Han Li frowned slightly. Elder Lu noticed his expression and asked with surprise if something was wrong. Han Li explained that it was nothing serious, just that an old acquaintance wished to see him and it would take a moment, asking his senior brother and Brother Lan to go ahead, saying he would return quickly. Elder Lu nodded and smiled, saying of course that they would head back, first to discuss among the cultivators of the Heavenly Tao Alliance, and then send information back to their senior marshal brother to see how each sect in the alliance would handle the matter. The Child Fire Dragon also responded with a smile, and Han Li saluted before slowly walking away. Elder Lu stood at the entrance of the hall and watched the direction Han Li had taken. The Child Fire Dragon, with a mysterious smile, asked if Brother Lu was worried about something. Although Elder Lu felt uneasy in his heart, he kept a calm exterior and asked what there would be to worry about. The Child Fire Dragon smiled and explained that he should have already guessed. Han Li was originally from Yellow Maple Valley, and eccentric Lingshu was nearing the end of his lifespan just like their own senior marshal brother. As the only nascent soul cultivator in Yellow Maple Valley, Linghu would naturally be burning with anxiety. While a small sect might fade away quietly, Cultivator could easily face extermination by its enemies. It would be strange if it was not Linghu who had sent Han Li the voice transmission. This reveals the brutal law of survival for sects. A sect's existence is tied directly to its highest level protector. Without a nascent soul, its territory, resources, and disciples become prey for others. Brother Lu did not immediately respond. After pondering for a moment, he asked how Brother Lan knew of Han Li's origins, as he did not recall mentioning them. The Child Fire Dragon explained bluntly that there was no need for him to say it. Since the Drifting Cloud Sect had suddenly acquired a young newly ascended elder, the Ancient Sword Sect had naturally felt the need to investigate. Elder Lu had nothing to say in response. After a moment, he shook his head and said that Han Li had simply said he was going to see an old acquaintance. If he had originally intended to go back to Yellow Maple Valley, he would have already done so long ago, not waited until now. The Child Fire Dragon shook his head, saying that may be true, but Linghu was a cunning old fox, and since he invited Han Li over, he should have some confidence in convincing him. Elder Lu grew silent for a moment, and eventually a troubled expression appeared on his face. He sighed, saying they would leave it to fate. If Han Li truly wished to return to Yellow Maple Valley, what could his senior marshal brother or he do to stop him? Meanwhile, Han Li stood in a small remote street, observing his surroundings, before noticing a two-story pavilion only about 20 meters wide, with a small banner at its entrance that said Tea. There were two yellow-robed Foundation Establishment cultivators standing guard there. He smiled for a moment before approaching. When the two saw him, they respectfully saluted him, saying their martial ancestor was waiting for him. Han Li nodded and entered without a word. The entire building was extremely quiet, as if no one was there. He hesitated before climbing to the second floor, where he found someone calmly waiting for him, the yellow-robed, sallow-faced ancestor Linghu he had just seen in the hall. He was sitting at the octagonal table in the center of the room, sipping a cup of tea. Han Li's gaze flickered and he walked forward without hesitation, silently taking a seat across from him. Noticing that a teacup had already been prepared for him, Ancestor Linghu said nothing. He simply waved his hand, causing the teapot on the table to float and pour tea into the cup in front of Han Li before floating back down. A small display of effortless control that mid-level cultivators often use to demonstrate refinement. He narrowed his eyes at Han Li and suggested he try the spirit tea, saying it was good. Han Li smiled and brought the cup up, glancing at the clear green liquid within, then took a sip and said it was decent, a grade higher than common spirit teas. Lingu chuckled and said unhurriedly that it seemed Han Li was also fond of tea, and that he was right to meet him here. Holding no intention to speak in circles, Han Li bluntly said that surely he did not invite him here just to sample tea, and asked him to speak directly if he had something to say. In his mind, this ancestor clearly recognized him, and he could already guess why he was invited. Lingu, no longer hiding his purpose, calmly asked if Han Li would be willing to return to Yellow Maple Valley as an elder, speaking as if it were a minor issue. Han Li showed no change in expression and simply looked down at the teacup in his hand. A bright glint shone from Lingu's eyes and he continued slowly, saying there was no need to mention how Han Li was treated wrongly in the past, and that he had to tell him his own lifespan was running short, with only 20 years at best before he would pass away. As long as Han Li returned, Yellow Maple Valley would be his. Surely he would not hold on to some minor grudge for so long. Han Li raised his head and stared at Lingu, shaking his head. He said he no longer cared about matters of the past, and if he had been in Lingu's position, he might have done the same. However, he was currently an elder of the Drifting Cloud sect and had no intention of joining another sect, suggesting Lingu find someone else. Lingu smiled coldly, saying of course he knew Han Li had joined the Drifting Cloud sect, but pointing out that the Drifting Cloud sect still had 2 other elders, so control had to be shared, and asking if he would not be happier being the sole holder of power. Han Li pursed his lips into a faint sneer, explaining that Lingu misunderstood. He did not enter a sect for authority, but merely wished to find a suitable place for cultivation, and had no interest in control over a sect. Lingu frowned but soon regained his calm. He argued that being the sole power over a sect was extremely beneficial for cultivation, as he would not have to trouble himself to find rare medicines and materials, and would gain an incomparable status. Moreover, he appealed to emotion, asking if Han Li had no interest in his past sect members, many of whom from his generation were still within Yellow Maple Valley. Without a nascent soul protector, they could be extinguished in a single night by a coalition of other sects. Han Li smiled carelessly, saying that as an elder of the Drifting Cloud sect he had no lack of spirit, medicines and materials, and that status and reputation in the cultivation world were hollow to him. As for the death of a sect, it was a common occurrence. No matter how long a sect existed, they eventually disappeared with their legacy lost. As for his old sect members, he would not be involved with them, and he could only hope fate would treat them kindly. When Ancestor Lingu heard Han Li's response, he frowned and did not speak for a long time. Instead, he slowly raised his teacup and took a sip. Then he explained his true feelings, saying it was obvious he was very different from Han Li. He had spent over 1,000 years overseeing Yellow Maple Valley and had grown extremely attached to it, and did not wish for its legacy to be severed once he died. He could see that Han Li had little interest in fame or profit. But if Han Li was willing to succeed him as the Grand Elder of Yellow Maple Valley, he was willing to present his own personal riches to him. The treasures he had collected, over many years that would be greatly useful for future cultivation. After a moment of shock, Han Li narrowed his eyes and asked about the inheritance, recalling that Lingu should have personal disciples of his own. Ancestor Lingu smiled coldly and explained that among his disciples, the highest only held mid-core formation cultivation. If he left his inheritance with them, it would only invite calamity upon them. Even if Han Li did not accept, he would not be leaving the majority of his treasures to the sect. This reveals a brutal truth of the cultivation world. Wealth without strength to protect it does not bring fortune, it brings death. Han Li rubbed his chin and pondered. To tell the truth, he felt some temptation. However, he clearly understood that if he accepted the position as a Yellow Maple Valley elder, he would likely have to face many entangling problems within the 6 sects of Yue and the 9 Nations Union, matters that would take a long time to settle. Furthermore, while he would have more authority as the sole elder of Yellow Maple Valley. Conversely, he would be sacrificing the freedoms he enjoyed with the Drifting Cloud Sect, where he was left alone to cultivate without being bothered. More importantly, there was the problem he would have when he faced the Masked Moon Sect, with whom he had old enmity. After a long moment of thought, Han Li shook his head, thanking him for his kind offer, but saying the matter should not be mentioned further. Ancestor Lingu was not angered upon hearing this. Rather, his face only revealed helplessness. He sighed and said that since Han Li had refused those conditions, it seemed he was unwilling to be involved with the 6 sects of Yue. If that was the case, he had another proposal to make. Han Li's expression stirred with curiosity about what other proposal could be. Lingu bitterly smiled and suggested that since Han Li did not wish to be an elder of Yellow Maple Valley, how about he give him 3 treasures in exchange for 3 requests for help from Yellow Maple Valley in the future, requests that would of course be within his capabilities. After a moment of thought, Han Li quickly nodded, saying he could accept conditions of 3 requests within his capabilities. Lingu wore a faint smile and placed 3 items on the table, as if he had prepared them beforehand. Without another word, Han Li's eyes wandered onto the 3 items. There was a small shiny blue shield, a red jade bottle, and a jet black jade pendant. Showing no restraint, he grabbed the small blue shield first. When it entered his grasp, it grew soft and light as if nothing was there, and he examined it more thoroughly in surprise, still not knowing what material it was refined from. Lingu glanced at the blue shield with reluctance and explained. It was an ancient treasure he had acquired in his youth that had accompanied him for a long while. He called it the Blue Light Shield, saying its abilities were powerful, and it was particularly effective at resisting fire attribute attacks, and that Han Li would find this to be true when he tested it. This points to the distinction in this world between common magic treasures and ancient treasures. Ancient treasures often possess unique materials and innate abilities that modern refinement methods can no longer replicate. Han Li stroked the shield for a moment before returning it to the table. From how strange it appeared, Lingu's words should hold true. He then grabbed the red jade bottle. Lingu explained that in the past, he had snuck deep into the Mulan Plains and exterminated a grade 7 Iron-Wing demon beast, and that bottle contained its core, an incredibly rare material with no shortage of uses. Han Li inwardly sighed at the mention of a grade 7 demon core. Although grade 7 cores were extremely rare items in the Heavenly South, they were of little value to him now given his own collection and cultivation level. But he displayed no change in expression. He smiled and opened the bottle, glanced inside, and put it back in its original location, then turned his eyes to the last item on the table. This time, Lingu simply wore a strange smile instead of taking the initiative to introduce it. Han Li's gaze silently wandered around the jade pendant. After pondering for a while, he doubtfully asked if this jade talisman was something refined by ancient cultivators. A trace of surprise appeared on Lingu's face. Curious that Han Li had seen a jade talisman before, as according to what he knew, these talismans were unique even during times of antiquity and should have vanished in the Heavenly South, with even fewer cultivators knowing of them. Han Li smiled and said he had merely encountered a fellow Taoist who happened to know of such things and heard about it from them. Lingu glanced at the black jade talisman and explained it was something he had risked his life to obtain and was definitely valuable. Although he still had not managed to grasp the proper way to use it and could only use a fraction of its abilities, its power was shocking. He had used it several times to strike down enemies, and it should be a quality item meticulously created by an ancient cultivator specializing in talismans. To demonstrate, Lingu summoned the talisman into his hand and chanted an ancient and obscure incantation in a muffled voice, transforming the jade talisman into a ball of black light. A bone-chilling yin wind then blew past him, forming a demonic black-red hand above his head. This demonic hand shined with black-red light and was over a meter wide. Not only did it occasionally flicker with yin flames, it also carried an indescribable, eerie aura that filled the entire tea house with its appearance, making Han Li's heart tremble. Lingu explained that after acquiring the talisman, he had spent several 100 years studying it before, managing to use this single divine ability. He called it the profound ghost hand, saying that unless it was attacked by a Yang-type treasure, it would be nearly invulnerable, and any magic or ancient treasures it held would have their abilities immediately diminished and be captured obediently, even top-grade treasures having their might and spirituality reduced. As he spoke, he willed the large black hand to swell several times in size and grab a nearby table. Black yin flame silently swept past the wooden table and instantly consumed it, leaving not even ash behind. Hanley felt his breath turn cold at the sight. This hand appeared like a profound Devil Dao ability to attack with manifested spiritual sense. But since it originated from the jade talisman, there was no fear of any backlash from harm to the spiritual sense. As for the strange yin fire, that should be a different divine ability contained within the same talisman. Lingu then explained that the jade talisman was certain to possess other divine abilities, but unfortunately, he did not have much time left and would not have many more opportunities to discover its secrets. On the contrary, Han Li still had much time to unlock its secrets, though he warned that a majority of its power had already been consumed, and it should be used cautiously. He then pointed at the black hand and had it turn back into a ball of black light before flying back to the table as a jade talisman again. Hanley wore a smile, but he was very much interested. Even if the talisman was not as powerful as described, he would be able to learn much about ancient cultivator talisman techniques from studying it, which would be of great assistance to him. Once Lingu finished presenting the items, Hanley swept his sleeve across the table and the 3 items disappeared, leaving 3 translucent white jade discs in their place. He turned his eyes toward Lingu and calmly said that these formation discs were magic tools he had personally refined and were incapable of being replicated. After Lingu died, he would not decline a request that Yellow Maple Valley would have of him as long as it was brought with these tokens. Lingu smiled, saying good, and that with these words he would be able to continue on to other matters with peace of mind. Now that the matter was finished, Hanley took his leave as he had no further business there. Lingu did not offer much resistance and simply spoke a few polite words as he watched Hanley walk away. Once Lingu was alone, his smile faded and he stared at the table, deep in thought. Hanley did not immediately return to his residence once he left the tea house. Instead, he glanced at the sky and found a remote area before taking out the jade slip that the Heaven Peak Sect elder had given him. After carefully reading it with his spiritual sense, he wore a hesitant expression. Hanley fiddled with the jade slip in his hand as he pondered. Then with a flash of azure light, the jade slip vanished and he began to walk in large strides toward the location it described. After passing through a majority of Soaring Heavens City, he arrived at a remote corner where an ordinary mixed goods store was located. The store had a black wooden sign on its entrance reading, Jade Union Pavilion in large flamboyant calligraphy. Hanley examined it before slowly walking inside. The interior was not large, just a hall about 20 meters in length. Most of the items being sold were common materials and talismans, with an exquisite side door that led to the back. Behind the counter near the entrance was a middle-aged man in gray robes looking through a small ledger. Hanley swept his spiritual sense past him and saw his cultivation was very low, only in the realm of chi condensation. His appearance was rather ordinary. The middle-aged shopkeeper immediately smiled and stood up upon seeing Hanley enter and quickly welcomed him, asking what he wished to look at and saying his store was filled with all sorts of goods that would satisfy him. Hanley smiled and flipped his hand, revealing the green jade slip and placing it in the shopkeeper's hands. The shopkeeper's expression changed vastly, and he quickly put it away, then asked respectfully for the senior's name. Hanley casually gave his name. Upon hearing it was Senior Han, the man said his martial ancestor had already mentioned he would be coming but had not expected it so soon, and invited Han Li to follow him to the back. Hanley nodded and entered silently. To his surprise, it led to a warehouse filled with cabinets and trunks placed all over, with walls packed to the brim. The middle-aged man stepped forward to a wooden cabinet and gently pushed one corner, causing 2 adjacent cabinets to separate and reveal a stairway. He led the way and explained that out of fear that occasional guests would sense a restriction. They had placed a mechanism from the mortal realm instead. This shows a clever use of non-spiritual methods, since high-level cultivators can easily detect spiritual formations. A purely mechanical trapdoor is actually harder to notice. The man then stepped on a tile, causing a wall to open with a muffled creak, revealing an eerie passageway leading down. The shopkeeper stood to the side and smiled, saying he did not have the qualifications to enter and that the senior must go on alone. Hanley frowned and swept his spiritual sense downwards, feeling faint spiritual energy fluctuations in the passageway. Upon closer examination, he found a layer of restrictions there. But with his knowledge of spell formations, he judged it to be a simple spirit obstruction barrier. Although he could forcefully break through it, the people inside would certainly notice. Hanley hesitated. Although he was sure the Heaven Peak Sect elder would not try anything foolish within Soaring Heavens City, he did not wish to enter a sealed area with someone whose intentions as friend or foe were still unknown. As he hesitated, the people from within the formation seemed to guess what he was thinking. A moment later, the barrier was removed, allowing his spiritual sense to see inside. Hanley's heart stirred at the deliberate show of trust, and he was amazed by what he discovered. He muttered to himself that it was him, which was a surprise, and then walked down the passage without further hesitation. When the middle-aged man saw Hanley descend, he sealed the passage and returned the cabinets to normal before going back to tend the shop. The passage was very long, descending about 100 meters deep to preserve its secretive nature. Eventually, Hanley saw light from within the darkness and knew he had arrived at an exit. He quickened his pace and found himself in a stone room. The room was rather large but completely empty apart from a few praying mats. Facing the entrance were two men sitting cross-legged on such mats, both looking at Hanley with a smile. Hanley remained silent, choosing first to find an empty mat to sit on. He smiled to one of the two and said it was truly a surprise to find him here, that he absolutely did not think this fellow Taoist would find him. This person wore a tall crown and blue robes. It was Marquis Nanlong, who wryly smiled and said that even he found it difficult to believe. He had escaped calamity. When they had separated, he believed he had escaped, but his pursuers had tracked him down, using a secret technique and caught up to him at the edge of the Mulan Plains. However, heavens favor the persistent, and he later found a group of high-grade spell warriors that were looking for them. In the resulting confusion, he was able to, fortunately, return as his pursuers were vastly slowed down by the spell warriors. As he said that, a hidden intensity appeared on his face. His face was far more pale than Hanley remembered, and his eyes were listless, which in cultivation terms indicates severe damage to vitality and essence, the result of using life-saving secret techniques or sustaining heavy injuries. Of course, the person by his side was the white-robed Heaven Peak Sect elder he had met earlier. Hanley expressed appreciation that Nanlong was able to escape under those circumstances, but said he should be resting in his cave residence rather than urgently finding him, and mentioned there had been no hesitation to send a disciple to bother his concubine, showing faint annoyance in his tone. Marquis Nanlong chuckled and said Hanley misunderstood, that he only did it because he had no choice, as there were now people pursuing them, so this secret plan was to escape notice. He introduced the white-robed old man beside him as fellow Taoist Jade Pearl of the Heaven Peak Sect, a friend he would trust his life with, who was originally supposed to come with them on the last treasure hunt, but was occupied with sect matters at the time. Nanlong's attitude toward Hanley had entirely changed from when they first met, becoming much more respectful, which itself is commentary. After seeing Hanley kill another nascent soul cultivator, his view of Hanley's strength had fundamentally shifted. At that moment, the white-robed old man chuckled and saluted Hanley, speaking in a regretful tone that if his methods had offended him, he hoped Hanley would not take it to heart, as it was the only way. Hanley waved his hand, saying it was fine, and since there was a reason he would let it go, but asked if Nanlong had sought him out because of something from the jade box. Nanlong solemnly confirmed, saying according to his sources, the Ghost Spirit Sect had paid a heavy price to bribe their previous party members and were determined to acquire Master Kang Kun's map and method to enter Devilfall Valley. Hanley just happened to have acquired one of the items needed to enter Devilfall Valley. When combined with his map, they would be able to avoid a majority of dangers in the valley, allowing them to acquire the treasure. Something then came to Han Li's mind, and he asked if he meant the black ring. Nanlong grew excited, and a bit of color returned to his pale complexion, confirming that the Heaven-Earth ring was truly within Han Li's possession and saying this was great. Han Li frowned, feeling the name was somewhat familiar, then suddenly grew alarmed and asked if it was the Heaven-Earth, rings that wise Huang refined from meteor iron, recalling that ordinarily. The ring did not possess great ability, but when it encountered Great North Essence Light, it was able to control the Essence Light to kill others and become formless, considered a magic treasure of little interest otherwise. Nanlong praised his knowledge, confirming it was precisely that item. He explained that the Heaven-Earth rings were divided into yin and yang. The yin rings were able to protect oneself from essence light, while the yang rings were able to control the essence light to attack. Han Li should be in possession of the yin ring. Originally, Master Kang Kun had drawn assistance from the ring and managed to pass through the valley's essence light area unscathed. To his knowledge, although there were other methods to pass through the Great North Essence Light, they would require an extensive formation placed down by many cultivators, or treasures that were lost or incapable of being acquired. This explains why the ring, normally considered useless, becomes priceless in a specific environment. Devilfall Valley is infamous because its Great North Essence Light can destroy any magic treasure and cultivator who touches it, and only this specific ring can neutralize it. Nanlong then began to explain what he meant by seeking Han Li out, and Han Li glanced at the two and began to ponder deeply about the dangers and what there was to be gained.